What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Andy McCullough, senior MLB writer at The Athletic, maybe more famously known as the guy in the background of Bob Nightingale's celebration. You prefer to be introduced as?
I forgot about that. Wow, that was like not long ago and yet so long ago. Yeah, Bob did not realize I was in that picture until I walked out of the clubhouse and immediately 4 people texted me.
Yeah, I was going to say, it felt like you probably got a lot of text messages after that photo.
I did. I saw Bob all week and I'd already forgotten about it. I should have given him some shit for that. Anyway.
Well, we appreciate you being here. I'm excited to talk both what happened last week. You were just at the GM meetings, as well as maybe some thoughts on upcoming free agency. But you came on our show a couple times throughout the year. I'm curious, just as we think back to the Dodgers actually winning the World Series, given the state of their pitching staff, all that kind of thing. How improbable a week later do you feel like that run was, if at all?
So I actually went back and listened to what to our podcast from right before the postseason, because I just wanted to see how far off I was. And outside of predicting Padres Astros in the World Series, I think I did a pretty good job. I actually specifically said if the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, they're going to have to win a lot of games 7-5.
Yeah,
and they're going to have to win some games where they're down 4-0. So I don't know if you saw Game 5.
It's true.
It was very similar to the sort of path that I laid out. So, yeah, I mean, you asked, do they have enough pitching to win? And I was like, sure, it's going to be hard, but they do, which turned out to be true, right?
Yeah.
Because they had a great offense. They had a really good bullpen. They played good defense. They ran the bases well. And, more importantly than anything else, their best players all showed up.
Yeah.
Maybe not all at once. Maybe, there were some series where Ohtani was obviously more impactful than some other series, but Mookie Betts, had his great moments. Ohtani had his great moments. And obviously Freddie Freeman, especially in the World Series, reminded everyone why he's Freddie Freeman. And that is why they won. And so, it's a bit surprising, I think, what a lot of Dodgers fans, it seems like, and, as someone who's been covering, covered a good chunk of the Andrew Friedman era, as a beat writer, and then has been, kind of dispatched to do postseasons with there over the years. This is probably one of the weaker teams they've put out, but also it was the best team in baseball at the end of the day, right? They won more games than any other team. And then they won the World Series. How can you argue that this wasn't the best team in baseball, right?
Yeah.
And so is it surprising that the best team won? No. I think what it does is it offers a reminder of just kind of how strange and fickle this is, right? Where there were years like the 2022 team comes to mind, where absolute juggernaut, a true talent, possibly 120 win team, and they just crash out in 4 games.
Yeah.
And so you can't really, it's a funky sort of sport, but at the end of the day, they were the best team and they proved it.
Yeah. The Mookie Betts thing cracks me up because he didn't necessarily have, the huge moments that you remember, but I've said on this show, I thought it was so fitting that he got the game-winning RBI in Game 5 with the sacrifice fly. Because when you look back on the postseason, I think a ton of Dodger fans would have been surprised to hear he led the team in on-base percentage and slugging percentage for the entirety of the postseason, but somehow did it kind of without the iconic. If you were to say, what are the most iconic moments? We walked through them on our show last week, and it's his sac fly in Game 5 is kind of the only of the top 10 iconic moments of this entire postseason run that he was in the middle of. So it's a fascinating. It's just funny how that works sometimes, and Tommy Edman, who was great in the NLCS, it's he had some moments there and guys just came up in different spots. So I did want to ask, from a national perspective, you have more insight, I think, than I do as somebody who is focused simply on one team. This World Series was hyped up as, the biggest World Series in 40 years, Dodgers, Yankees, East Coast, West Coast, 4 of the biggest faces and names in the sport, all that. From your perspective, nationally, did this live up to that hype in your estimation?
I mean, it did and it didn't. I mean, I think that the, game, there was 2 really good games, right? Game 1 and Game 5, I think were, particularly fascinating. I think, the walk-off grand slam in Game 1, is going to go down as one of the more memorable moments, I think, in baseball history. And I think, for people who had never watched, if you'd never watched baseball before and you tuned in to Game 5, you would have seen basically like everything the sport is capable of offering, the sort of, stratospheric highs and perilous lows for both teams. I mean, that just must have been an absolutely miserable viewing experience. I can imagine for anyone who
can confirm.
Yeah, like just absolutely terrible, Yeah, I mean, and that's what baseball's supposed to be. I mean, there's that great tweet where it's like everyone in this ballpark, wants to like walk into traffic or something like that, and that's what it's all about. It's like, like everyone watching the game was just having a bad time. That's baseball. It's the best. So, was it a classic 7-game series where two evenly matched teams were, kind of trading blows? No, the Dodgers were clearly a better team. They basically played better in all the high leverage moments. They played a cleaner brand of baseball, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I would still say it has to be considered a success for baseball, as a whole, to just get two teams like this and get the attention that they did. And, with Ohtani and everything like that, generating so much interest in Japan. And so is it the perfect scenario or like the perfect World Series? No, but it was pretty good for business, I would say.
Two more questions on the World Series before we move into free agency. And I want to ask you about two particular human beings that, as somebody who covered this team as a beat reporter, I imagine you have feelings and thoughts about these two players. I'll start with Walker Buehler. I said on our show right after Game 5 that the most emotional moment for me of the entire postseason run was the moment when I knew he was in the bullpen and I knew he was about to come into the game. And to see him get that moment as a guy who has literally put his body on the line for this franchise, probably had a second Tommy John because he never said no to taking the ball. And in this moment, about to enter free agency with one day off, goes in and says, hey, I got you. And then he does it. Like, I'm curious for you as a reporter, but then also just as a human being who has spent time around Walker Buehler. What was that moment like for you?
Well, I was mostly focused on my game story, which was utter misery. So I wasn't too deep in my feelings on all of that. But I will say, like, when I was on here in, September and we talked about Buehler, I said, the Dodgers are basically just making a bet on the person, right? Yeah. Like, they're just betting that Walker Buehler is going to show up in October and be a version of Walker Buehler, who they remembered, before the second surgery. And that is what happened. And Walker Buehler is someone who, as you said, has put his body, put his arm specifically on the line. He took the ball on short rest in 2021 when Max Scherzer refused to pitch. He has cost himself hundreds of millions of dollars, sort of putting his body at risk. He is a free agent right now, and his, final act before free agency is taking the ball, on one day of rest to try and close out the World Series. And to him, it was like not even a question. It was just like, I have to do it. And so I will say, he's not someone like I've been particularly like close with over the years, to be honest, just because, he was only on the team in 2018, which was my final year on the beat. I haven't been around as much in previous years, but, we've talked a good amount, I would say, over the past couple of years, both for like the Kershaw book and various other projects. And so you know each other well enough. And I went up to him, kind of in the clubhouse afterwards, and, everyone's going crazy. And he's just like, he was going crazy at various times, but it was kind of like a quiet moment for him. He's just kind of standing there. And I just like walked up to him and I was like, hey man, he's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, I imagine that was pretty cool for you. And he looks at me and he goes, you know what? It was. And I was like, yeah, hey, congrats. So he was very, understandably, I think, satisfied. It's one of the more memorable, moments in Dodgers history. I mean, it's like, he's going to be, no matter what happens this offseason, he's always going to be remembered for doing that.
Yeah, and the story, I think Fabian had it afterwards of Kershaw finding him in the clubhouse and telling him he loves him. I was just like, you're going to make me cry, Fabian. Don't tell me this stuff. I mean, because, again, as a Dodgers fan, the Kershaw piece, the Buehler piece, seeing those two worlds collide and for it to actually work.
Yeah, and seeing their relationship sort of develop over the years as they both sort of they were not close when they started playing. There was this idea that the Dodgers wanted Kershaw to be a mentor for Buehler, and Kershaw was like not great at that stuff, and Buehler wanted no part of it, so it was like a very, it's kind of like oil and water, but the more time they've spent around each other, I think like Buehler has talked more openly about how he's come to respect the sort of pressure and the burden that Kershaw put on himself, to carry the franchise. And as Buehler came to be aware of what that weight felt like, he gained more and more respect for what Kershaw had done all the years. And Kershaw has always respected that Buehler, again, like put the team before himself on many occasions. And so that's like, that little moment there, it was a great job by Fabian to get that, of Buehler going to do the thing that Kershaw has done, time and again, and do the thing that has put Kershaw's, body reputation at so much risk, but doing it because he believed it was, the right thing to do, the necessary thing to do. I mean, that, I think demonstrates kind of the bond there. That makes sense.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. The other guy I want to ask you about is Dave Roberts. I don't pretend to follow every World Series run super closely where I'm evaluating managers throughout. That said, I've seen Dave Roberts manage through a lot of postseasons and World Series. This has to be one of the greatest managerial performances from start to finish, NLDS, NLCS, World Series, navigating bullpen games, navigating a starting pitching rotation where it's like he's being accused of punting games, but then coming back and winning the next game. Like Flaherty gives him nothing, and then the next time out, he gives him 7 shutout. Like, give me you and I have talked a lot over the years about Dave Roberts, his standing in the game, etc. I'm just curious your perspective of what he did over the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, he also survived an assassination attempt in San Diego. Manny Machado threw a baseball at him.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I mean, not enough people are talking about it.
It's
Andy.
true. Yeah. I mean, I think, I've talked to people, both within the Dodgers and around the game, friends of Dave have reached out to him and just told him how impressed they were watching it. They had the same impression that you did. And to be honest, like he's done this before, like in 2017, he was very dialed in. In 2020, he was very dialed in. I mean, they won the World Series in a bullpen game.
Yeah,
like people kind of forget that, but like and he understood to ride Julio Urias through those final 3 innings rather than going to someone else. And they won the World Series. And so he has shown over the years his ability to feel the game, to understand what is going on tactically. Like he's one of the best. At the same time, right, like Kike Hernandez and I were talking about this a little bit after the games, because Kike's been there for a good chunk of, sort of Dave's tenure. And, he was saying what others have said, which is just like, look, if you're in the postseason every year, like sometimes things go wrong and the manager gets blamed for it. And there, there's some times where it's more egregious, like 2019 obviously comes to mind. And there's other times where like the plan doesn't work and the manager's kind of left holding the bag. But this year, to me, it seemed like both the plans that the team had and the strategy they had made the most sense for what their roster was. And Roberts executed it as close to flawlessly, I think, as he could have. And, it also demonstrated how he's evolved, I think, as a manager, as sort of like, I don't want to say like nauseating makes it seem, but as difficult it is to stomach the idea of punting a game in the NLCS, like punting a game where you have a chance to win the pennant or punting a game where you have a chance to win the World Series. As crazy as that sounds, the Dodgers understood that was kind of what they had to do given the restrictions on their roster in order to win. And I was reminded of the 2017 World Series, Game 3 in Houston. Yu Darvish goes down early. I think he gives up like 4 runs. Maybe it's 5 runs. I'm trying to remember. But
we blocked these moments out.
Yeah. But it was a lot of runs, but not a lot of runs because you have the Dodgers offense, right? Yeah. And I believe in the second inning, Kenta Maeda came in to mop it up. And Kenta Maeda, as you remember then, was like a high leverage reliever for the Dodgers. He was like a 7th inning type guy before Morrow and Kenley Jansen. And Maeda gets 8 outs. And the idea was Roberts is like, I'm not punting a World Series game. Like my offense is good enough. I'm giving my offense a chance. Right? They didn't come back, but it makes sense, right? Yeah. You can't punt a World Series game. And what happens 2 days later when Maeda comes in and tries to close the door in, I believe, the 5th inning? He gives up a bomb to Jose Altuve. Now, I have been told that there might have been some other stuff going on that led to all of this. But in general, right,
Yeah.
it's that sort of idea of like there is every action that you do, specifically with your relievers, has a cost down the road, potentially in like a 7-inning series. And so, there you have to you have to use your team. You have to play your team. And sometimes the guys on your team are, it's Landon Knack.
Yeah.
It's Brent Honeywell. And like they're there, they got to soak up some outs. They got to like wear it basically. And Roberts understood that that was something that they had to do. And then he had to come out and defend it essentially. And he did that. And if they had lost, he would have been blamed for that.
Yeah.
He would have been blamed for or I guess for trying to follow a strategy based on the limitations of his roster. Right. And so I think his ability to like navigate that was incredibly impressive. And so, you go from a scenario where if they lose that game 4 to San Diego, I think there's going to be serious conversations about whether he's the manager in 2025 of the Dodgers, to winning the World Series, where I think he is pretty clearly going to go into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
As a manager. And that seems kind of binary. That's the job, man. Like,
totally.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And to your point, like, I think it's so interesting to me that he gets accused of punting game 5 in the NLCS, punting game 4 of the World Series. And what happens? They win the next game in both situations. Like, so it's almost like I just imagine Dave with his feet kicked up on his desk. And he's like, where's everybody that got pissed at me now? And
well, they did run out of pitching in game 5 against the Yankees.
Totally.
But again, like, hey, credit goes to the players too. Walker Buehler understood, like, hey, the math might not work here. We need someone to go down and do it. And credit to to Roberts being like, oh yeah, sounds like let's go with Walker for that 9th inning. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's shift. Let's look ahead now. There's a lot of storylines, as always, with the Dodgers when it comes to free agency. I'm curious, you were just at the GM meetings. What's sort of the buzz around what the Dodgers might actually do this offseason? If I just ask you big picture before getting into specifics.
I do love the hilarious announcement that Mookie Betts is moving to second base. Is there a corner outfielder who played in New York who they might theoretically, they could definitely afford, but they would love to drive the price
up. Well, now, thank goodness they've got a spot on the roster for him now. That was concerning to me.
Man, I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to find a way to fit Soto onto the roster. I appreciate their ability to like sort of get in on every guy and just be like, hey, if you're interested in a short-term commitment in Los Angeles. Now, again, as for the Dodgers and Soto, they can afford him. Sure, go for it. Like, seems crazy. It's not my money, but not crazy, but just like it's such a big sum that it's like almost hard to wrap your brain around. But look, you got the Ohtani credit card, even though they always insist they don't have an Ohtani credit card. Sure, go for it. Like, why not? I think it might cause some roster problems with the DH spot and Ohtani, but you'd also have Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani, and what's the problem? Seems like a high class problem, as Dave Roberts would say.
Do you think they're really do you think it's a real chance that they're in on him? I mean, I know
I just
came out with the article that was like, sources saying the Dodgers are going to pursue, and you read the article and it was basically some guy saying like, hey, the Dodgers are in on everybody. Like, so I'm just trying to sort, is there actual sourcing that the Dodgers are going to pursue him, or is it the assumption in Major League Baseball that the best players will always have the Dodgers making offers?
Combination, right? Okay. Like, the Dodgers pursue everyone, and it's something there, Andrew Friedman likes to talk about being around the backboard on stuff, right? Because you want to be in on everything because you never know when the opportunities are. Like, all of a sudden, wait, what do you mean Freddie Freeman isn't going back to the Braves? Oh, we'll take him, That's
for like a discount, basically.
Right. And it's like, oh, wow, no one signed Teoscar Hernandez. Hey, Teoscar, we've got a 1-year opportunity for you here, and sometimes that backfires, in like the form of like Trevor Bauer, right? Like, but it's the same sort of, they didn't sign Bauer to a 7-year deal. They signed him to, a 3-year deal, obviously huge disaster, all that. We don't need to get into it, but it's that same sort of mentality. And so, could they compete with the Yankees, for Soto at the top of the market? Yes. Would they be willing to are they willing to surpass what Steve Cohen and the Mets are willing to offer? I just don't believe that.
Okay.
If only because Cohen just has so much more money than Guggenheim. Like,
which is crazy to think.
It's just true. Like, he's just so much richer than everyone. And like, so at the end of I think they'll be in, and I think they'd be happy to have him. It's hard for me to foresee them winning the bidding. There's also a sense that Soto loves New York, wants to stay in New York, all that sort of stuff, So I think it's a real interest. I don't know. I put it similar to with Yamamoto. I was very surprised last year when they got Yamamoto, if only because before then they had never gone to the top of the market and made the biggest offer, right? Yeah. That's just not their MO. It doesn't mean they haven't spent, but they've never, like, they got Mookie Betts at something of a discount with deferrals. They got Freddie Freeman at something of a discount with deferrals. They didn't get Garrett Cole because their offer had too much deferrals, all that sort of stuff. The Ohtani contract changed their business strategy. Yeah. They have, so all this is to say, I think the Soto interest is real. I would still be very, very surprised if he leaves New York.
Okay. The other big name in Dodgers land is Roki Sasaki. Mm-hmm. And it feels like there are some people that know some things and other people that are just guessing. I think it was Kylie McDaniel of ESPN wrote that the belief is that he is going to be posted. And he said, you won't believe this, but coincidentally enough, if he comes over before December 15th, the team with the most money to offer him happens to be the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Wow. Did you happen to catch
not that
Andrew?
I think money is going to be the driving factor of coming over now, but what's the read on in the industry? Is he going to be posted? And are the Dodgers really like the prohibitive favorite?
Did you happen to catch that clip during the World Series of Andrew Friedman being asked about the international bonus pool?
Unbelievable. So good.
That should let you know how disinterested they are in discussing even the idea of Roki Sasaki publicly, because there is a widespread belief around baseball that Sasaki is going to land with the Dodgers. Love it. If you ask Dodgers people, they say, we don't know. We're going to find out like everyone else.
We're playing by the rules. We haven't talked to anybody yet.
Well, it's like, it is what it is. There's a lot of teams believe that Sasaki's going to be with the Dodgers, but if he does get posted, which it's unclear, this week heard it both ways, right? Heard it that like he's expected to be posted. Other folks saying, I heard it's not, I'm not so sure. It's a complicated situation that like I can't even totally understand. You should probably have Dylan Hernandez on to do it because he both like actually speaks Japanese and is better sourced in NPB stuff. But like, there is a perception that when Sasaki gets posted, he is expected to go to the Dodgers. It would make sense if you were a young Japanese star and you wanted to play with like Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Guess who they play for? The Dodgers. Yeah. So, similarly to, I'd be surprised if Soto didn't land with New York. I would be surprised if when Sasaki is posted, he does not sign with the Dodgers.
Okay. Mookie Betts, you mentioned the announcement from Brandon Gomes, which I thought was just a bizarre announcement because it was one of those, like, the Dodgers are usually pretty good about not giving anybody any information. And in Dodgers world, that comment was interesting because people are looking at the roster and they're like, well, that's interesting. Gavin Lux plays second base and can't play shortstop. He's a guy that I think a lot of people wanted to ship out of LA 4 months ago and then maybe changed their mind and then maybe came back around to wanting to trade him. They have Tommy Edman, who can play center field, which is also a need. Like, is this, I viewed it as almost a leverage play in the shortstop market of like, no, we're not desperate for Willy Adames. We're not desperate for fill in the blank. Like, or did you think it was just Brandon Gomes being honest and saying, no, like, he's just playing infield. We'll figure the rest out later. But I'm just telling you, he's going to be playing infield.
I interpreted it as, one, they would like to publicly, Betts wants to be in the infield. And so they kind of want to just nip that in the bud. He's an infielder now. That's been an issue for years of, they want some more flexibility. They prefer him in right field. He's made pretty clear he wants to be on the infield. He feels it's better for his career long-term. And he still views himself as an infielder. You have to understand that about Mookie Betts is he feels like he never actually lost his ability to play the infield. He just got moved off because he got promoted to a team that had a second baseman already. Anyway, I think it's related to the Soto market. I think they want to be perceived as in that market as possible, to try and drive up, the price for other clubs. And to signal that, probably Lux is available theoretically. Yeah. I don't think the representatives for like Willy Adames are like, oh, geez, they're playing Mookie at short. Well, I guess we shouldn't call there.
Yeah, fair.
I just don't, the Dodgers could afford Adames, and I think he's a good player and he would make them better. I'd be pretty surprised to see them on him just because there's other teams who are going to be more desperate.
Okay.
And, the Dodgers, they have Tommy Edman. You can just roll into next year with like, you could move Gavin Lux. You could try and play Lux in the outfield, or you could, whatever. You could put Dalton Rushing in left theoretically, and you can play Edman and Betts up the middle and enter the season and be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're facing any sort of pressure to improve at any of those positions. They do need some outfielders though.
Yeah. Let me ask you about Walker Buehler, his free agency. Tim Britton, who works for The Athletic, who does a great job at projecting contract values, projected 2 years and $32 million for Walker Buehler, which I felt like I was in the minority by not being surprised they didn't offer him the qualifying offer. And the only reason I wasn't surprised is because I think his market is more in the $15 to $16 million a year range. There are some people that have speculated that the Dodgers not offer him a qualifying offer kind of for the same Clayton Kershaw reasons of out of respect for Walker Buehler. Like, do you think there's any truth to that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's at least how they're messaging it is like, part of the reason is that they did not want to pressure him to take it and kind of suppress his market, because then if they make the qualifying offer, he either has to take it or he's kind of cooked, because then all of a sudden you have to like give up, you'd have to give up a pick to sign him. So that would really depress his market, and that would create basically like, hey, you've got X amount of days to take this and basically try and figure it out. And so they viewed it as more fair to him and to his market to not make the offer, because it's so sort of onerous if he declines it.
Is the expectation that he will come back to the Dodgers?
I think they're going to be around the backboard.
Okay.
Like they would like to have him back for sure. They like him as a player, but they also have a lot of arms.
Yeah.
They have, they already have to, they have Ohtani, who's going to be trying to pitch, right? They have Yamamoto. They have Glasnow.
Is Glasnow, by the way, can I ask about Glasnow real quick? Like, sure. I'm skeptical of a guy with his injury history having an elbow injury just being ready to pitch in 3 months. Am I crazy for that?
No, I mean, look, it's Tyler Glasnow. It's always going to be up in the air whether he's available. But they have to roster him.
Yeah.
It becomes an issue less about like, is this guy healthy, but just like how many spots on the roster do we have for players making real money, on this sort of thing. And so, so I think that they're interested in Buehler, and that similar sort of like pillow contract, kind of framework.
Yeah.
But I mean, they'll just kind of wait and see how it plays out, I guess.
Okay. Last question for you. I feel like with free agency, with the Dodgers in particular, there is, hey, they're going to be in on Soto, Sasaki, etc. There always feels like there's a move that, on November 1st, nobody is talking about as it relates to the Dodgers. In your estimation, are there any rumblings? I mean, I know there's guys, Garrett Crochet, they've been connected to in the past. Bo Bichette, they've been connected to in the past. Like, is there a move out there like that? Maybe it's free agency, maybe it's a trade that if you had to say, hey, here's one like thing to just monitor, a name to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Lux is obviously going to be in play, I think, as a potential trade chip. They could try and, let the White Sox reunite Lux and Miguel Vargas as the, sort of doomed middle infield of the 2023 Dodgers.
That would feel very White Sox.
I mean, also, like, if you're the White Sox, these are the sort of players you should be trying to acquire, kind of, actually. So, like, but yes, I don't know. I mean, Lux is so interesting because, like, at the end of the day, like, he's a good player,
Right.
he's just, he may not be that sort of superstar that they projected, sort of before the ball got dejuiced and he started dealing with some injuries. But like, he is a good player who I think a lot of teams, including the Dodgers, would like to have. So the value there is decent. Crochet makes some sense. I'll be curious to see like if they're aggressive at all in the relief market, like if they looked at Tanner Scott and were just like, let's get that guy so Shohei Ohtani never sees him again. Like that sort of thing. Like, let's get a power lefty. But also, they, as you saw from like Anthony Bonda, Evan Phillips, they can find those sort of guys. So it's again, they're in that ideal position of Andrew Friedman's optionality where like they can do anything and they don't really have to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. They can do everything. They don't really have to do anything. Right. Like, everything's on the table. Soto, all this stuff. But if they just kind of took their current roster and like made a couple like, minor additions, you'd still pick them to win.
Right.
The West. So
that's the craziest part. Like, if Teoscar resigns, Buehler resigns, Rushing gets called up, like I don't think it's a hard argument to make that they will be a better team next year because of all the guys that will be healthy.
Yeah.
Dustin May, like Shohei Ohtani, like they just have guys that weren't even available for this run.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I think maybe it was Daniel Brim said this, on Twitter, but it was just the idea of like, no matter whatever they do this winter, the most important thing for them long term is figuring out the pitching development and getting it so they stop breaking guys.
Yeah,
and that was something that has just completely disappeared from discussion, right? Because they won the World Series, so who gives a shit? Who cares about their pitching development? But internally, there was, I was around the team a decent amount in September, going in, and there was a lot of people talking about, I was like, look, in the offseason, like, we really need to get this shit together because like we cannot have this moving forward. That goes to the back burner, right? When you're like competing for the World Series, then you win the World Series. And then Andrew Friedman's not going to come out at the parade and be like, this is great. And also we got to chill with the velo camps, but I think long-term, that is the most important thing that they are dealing with right now, which is like, how do we get it so that we take these talented arms and basically they stop breaking.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know the results on that for quite a while. But if you're a Dodgers fan, you have to hope that they're going to attack that project with the same sort of attentiveness that they would have had they crashed out in the first round.
It is interesting because it feels like, velo aside, part of their philosophy has been, we just want to have the best, highest quality players available in the moments when they matter most. And we're sort of going to take on a bunch of injury risk. And obviously that backfired in a bunch of ways. But I look at, maybe the most important arm that pitched in the clincher was Blake Trinan, who literally, that's the whole deal, is you're going to pay him $12 million to throw you 25 innings, and you just cross your fingers and hope that if he's available in Game 5 of the World Series, he might be the best relief pitcher in baseball.
For sure.
Like at times. So in some ways, I wonder if they look back and they're like, I don't know, maybe the strategy kind of worked.
Yeah.
Like Trinan was there, starting pitching, it didn't, but it's just funny that in some ways the process resulted in what they were hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, definitely when in terms of bullpen creation, bullpen management, it's like, look, they know what they're doing. Like they, keep doing what you're doing. It's more just like Emmett Sheehan, River Ryan, Gavin Stone, like all these guys, they got to get under the hood and figure out like, okay, how much of this is just young pitchers are getting hurt, at a pretty accelerated rate and there's nothing to be done. And how much is it, are we doing something to contribute to that?
Yeah.
And there's just no, I think separating the chicken and the egg there is going to take some work, but like that's the thing that for, if you're, if you want to see them at this, playing in this time of year, as consistently as they have been and succeeding, they're going to need some young pitchers to, sort of fill the role that has been, vacated since, Urias, Buehler, Kershaw, for various reasons are just no longer, there at the high level they were throughout the, the late 2010s and early 2020s.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Andy, we appreciate your time. You've been generous. Thank you. Hopefully you get to enjoy a little bit of off season now with the GM meetings over with.
A little bit. Yeah. I'm taking next week off, so that'll be good.
Good. Well, that's Andy McCullough. You can check his stuff out at The Athletic. Again, senior MLB writer, and all their stuff at The Athletic is awesome. So check it out. I mentioned Tim Britton, who's one of his colleagues, has a projections article up.
Yeah.
Fabian obviously has done a fantastic job.
Yeah, Fabian did a great job this postseason. Was really happy. He did awesome stuff. So yeah, read The Athletic. There's good stuff on there.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Again, this is Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. You can check us out Apple, Spotify, Google, or of course right here on YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your day. As always, go Dodgers.